have you been to Comic-Con before?
Never.
This is your first time?
Yeah. I do have to say that this was my sister and her husband's first weekend date was to Comic-Con, and they are now in the audience reliving, after all those years of marriage, their first sleepaway date.
Oh!
Yeah.
That's adorable!
Isn't that sweet?
Have you seen any of the con yet, or did you just say basically they kind of have to swoop you in?
I've kind of had to work today, but I'm looking forward to see the con later on.
You could put a mask on and just float through.
I'm gonna work this mask. So
You're good Sandra Bullock cosplay. Thanks.
Okay, all right.
The dress may be a bit of a problem.
Dressed well, you know, if it gets me free stuff, I'll wear whatever I need to.
Yeah. This movie looks incredible because it's definitely terrifying, but it feels like it's just you and George Clooney, and it's really all about the performances of you against each other. Was any of that scary, knowing that you're coming into the movie where it was the performances were going to have to drive it?
It should have been scary. I think what was scarier was the fact that these men created something that had never been done before. The technology basically was being created on the spot. Not on the spot, it had taken years to get us, to where once we humans stepped into whatever they created, they didn't know if it was going to work or not. And all these pieces were mathematically and systematically put together. There was no improvising. This was the brainchild of all these amazing people working together. So that was more daunting to me because you didn't want to let them down because they'd worked so long. I should have thought about the fact that it was just me and George, but you didn't, because it was just the physical aspect of it was so scary that you just wanted to step up to their game.
So, by the way, start lining up for questions because we're going to have some time for Q&A in a few minutes. But what was the workday like for you on this movie? Was it basically just like get into the suit and then you're in it for like 15 hours?
I think that's a great question for Alfonso to answer because he's like the evil puppeteer who masterminded the whole thing.
What was it like?
Well, it was a very intense experience for Sandra, that I have to admit. The film is about Ryan Stone being insulated in space, and as a big coincidence, the technology that we created to make the film required for her to be insulated. For a long time, she was in a cube that is 9 by 9 of LED lights, in which she would be in one rig in the center of that cube. Outside there were robots that were holding the camera. In some other instances, a robot that was holding the light. And this is robot, we're talking about the manufacturing, the car manufacturing robots. And then if you walk onto the set, you will see that strange cube that looked very beautiful at the end of the stage, and it was rows and rows and rows and rows of computers and a bunch of very wise geeks doing a lot of work. But the truth of the matter is that Sandra was completely insulated in that cube, and it took a while for her to get into the rig. So Sandra chose that in between the takes she would stay there, and she would stay there just in her zone with her music. Because something was very clear is that, as Sandra said, it was very mathematical, but our focus was not the technology, our focus was the performance. It was the emotional journey and how that was going to be translated.
Yeah. What were some of the challenges as a producer when you were putting this film together? You're like, well, they're trapped in space, and they're like, and you're like, no, it's going to be awesome. Like, how do you sell that? How do you make that work?
Well, one of the things that we're talking about is this amazing robot that was invented, at the end of which was the camera, because we never wanted to show gravity. They were in space, and Sandra and George were in space, and you didn't want, if they were upside down, you didn't want the face doing this and the face doing that. You didn't want any sense of gravity, so the camera would rotate around, and it was motoring down this track at around 20-25 miles an hour, and would stop on a dime. When Sandra said, well, you asked whether she was scared, what she was, I imagine, most scared of was this camera racing towards her and stopping literally an inch from her nose. So she couldn't lean too far forward. She had to go right back. And it was I imagine quite scary.
Iris was the name of the robot.
Yeah. What Alfonso forgot to mention was, within that cube, it wasn't like I was standing in a cube just, pacing. They had me locked in this grid where you had to crawl through it, locked into your waist, and kept your feet tight next to each other so you would oscillate. But if that robot did decide to continue through my face, I couldn't get out of its way. So that, he forgot to mention.
There was a guy with a red button. The problem is, we never told Sandy, is that by the time you push that button, it would be too late. So.
Sandy,